At school assembly, I was familiar with the prayer that said, "Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference." And while I normally found assembly boring and was unable to relate to much of what was being said, that piece of advice stuck with me. It became a mantra to me. It was written in the 1930s, and it even became enshrined in the 12-step program for Alcoholics Anonymous. It keeps you sane if you can separate what you can control from what's out with your control. And this reminds me of what happened way back 40 years ago when I was at Radio Clyde in the early days. I was told to push a story on. The news editor came in having heard me saying more or less the same thing for the last few hours about the search for a body on the ground of Balmoral, the Queen's estate in Aberdeenshire. So I was forced to write that it was understood the police had found a body. And then, of course, the police phoned and said, "We haven't." And I was hauled in front of the head of news to explain myself. That was 1980 that happened. Now, 5 years later, I started at the BBC. The news editor on my first day sent me out on a wild goose chase, and I had to come back and tell him it was a non-story. Can you imagine the first day of work telling your new boss that what he said you'd to cover was non-existent? So I induced the ire of the news editor, but by that stage I had learned the courage to challenge something with which I disagreed. And from that point on, that's the way I went about my job.